Greetings! I hope you're having an awesome day today. We're going to do a psalm for comfort. And don't think that, oh, well, once everything else gets handled, then I'll do something for comfort. If you can do a psalm for comfort, a lot of your little problems just kind of dissolve. So doing the Psalm 93 for comfort is, it's a good thing to do just to maybe before you work spells on stuff more specifically, just to see if you can make sort of a blanket psalmic operation that can bring that sense of peace, that sense of comfort. A lot of times things that come up that we think that we have to address specifically and individually are really just manifestations of existential anxiety, which this will take care of. We're not using any talismans today or candles. I want you to get used to the fact that those are wonderful things and we love using them, but they are optional and they have absolutely no effect on the psalm and how well it works for us. Okay, so we read it through once as an incantation out loud, and then we go through and meditate on each and every little verse and see where we can plant some good seeds. And today we're planting seeds of comfort. Here we go. Psalm 93. The Lord reigneth. He is clothed with majesty. The Lord is clothed with strength, wherewith he hath girded himself. The world also is established, that it cannot be moved. Thy throne is established of old, thou art from everlasting. The floods have lifted up, O Lords, the floods have lifted up their voice. The floods lift up their waves. The Lord on high is mightier than the noise of many waters, yea, than the mighty waves of the sea. Thy testimonies are very sure. Holiness becometh thine house, O Lord, forever. Okay, so let's look at these lines here. The Lord, we always have to start with what we mean. We got to define this term so that we are very clear that we're not praying to a deity, external deity. We are looking at the Lord that reigneth, the one that's actually inside you beating your heart. It's the one that's got synapses going across your nerves. It's that all the things that are firing your brain properly, all of that stuff, your nervous system, that's the Lord, okay? The Lord also is that same infinite intelligence that keeps the tides coming in and out. It's your mother, and it's your father, and it's the God and Goddess together as one. It's the if you think of the God and Goddess as a battery, positive and negative poles. If you cut or a magnet is better. If you cut a magnet in half, you can't say, okay, now I've got just the positive side of the magnet and just the negative side of the magnet. No, when you try to cut that in half, you get two magnets, each with its positive and negative pole. So there's no separation in God and Goddess. So it's oneness that we are looking at when we say the Lord reigneth. He is clothed, and he, the pronoun he, is just it's just a weakness in our language, okay? So recognize that we're not talking about only the Father, and definitely not something outside of us. He is clothed with majesty. Now, what's majesty? Majestic, right? Majestic. That's the it's royalty. So the Lord, your parents are the royalty of all the universe. And that makes you what? A prince or a princess, right? Right? You're somebody. You're somebody. So the Lord reigneth. He is clothed with majesty. The Lord is clothed with strength, wherewith he hath girded himself. Okay, so strength. Strength isn't just because you're pumping iron. I mean, that's part of it. That's especially from our point of view. We have to get strength. But God is strength. The Lord is strength. Clothed with strength, wherewith he hath girded himself. The world also is established, that it cannot be moved. So that which God created is eternal and cannot be moved. So anything in this world that is subject to death is obviously not God's creation. right? It is a reflection of God's creation. But because of our own belief in separation from God, we can only experience the world from our limited point of view. If we were coming from God's point of view, we would see everything as that which cannot be moved. So we want God to reinterpret our world for us, our circumstances for us, so that we can have our worlds be as God created them, rather than as we are projecting onto them. Thy throne is established of old. Thou art from everlasting. Again, we're looking at God as king and queen. We're looking at majesty. The throne is established of old, meaning that it's you want to talk about old religion. It's the oldest religion, meaning that there is only one God. There is only one kingdom, and we are part of that. And we are as old as all the kingdom. There's no such thing as an old soul and a young soul. That's ridiculous. We are all part of the same old established family. Thou art from everlasting. Everlasting. So God created us to be just as everlasting as God is. So this idea of our bodies, being born and dying, born and dying, born and dying, that's because of where we are in our perception, that we believe we're separate from our source. The way God sees it, God does not see us as dying and being reborn at all. God sees us as eternal. So we want God to reinterpret our world as God sees us, not as we see ourselves. That's very important, and that's what the psalm is talking about a lot. The floods have lifted up, O Lord, the floods have lifted up their voice. The floods lift up their wave. Now, what are the floods that lift up their voice? Well, the floods are all those fears, all of the comings and goings, the tides, all of this idea of that we're temporary, that we're at the effect of, that we are vulnerable to our world. And they've lifted up their voice. They've lifted up their waves. And so we feel so much when we come from the point of view of what we believe this world to be, we feel so vulnerable. We are so afraid. There is not one person that walks the face of this earth that doesn't feel fear. All right? But that fear is coming from a point of view of separation from our Creator. God does not see us that way. So God knows that there is nothing for us to fear. The Lord on high is mightier than the noise of many waters, yea, than the mighty waves of the sea. So God is not worried about the sea. And again, the sea meaning is a symbol of our own fears. God's not worried about the stuff that scares us. So if God's not worried, we don't need to be worried either. If we're worried, it means that we need to ask God, please reinterpret this for me. Show me how you see this. Show me how you see this situation. Thy testimonies are very sure. Holiness becometh thine house, O Lord, forevermore. Now the house of the Lord, yes, it's the dwelling where we dwell with God. It's his house, but it's also a royal house, meaning that we are part of the royal house of God. That means our father and mother are king and queen of all the universe, and we are part of their house. We are princes and princesses. We are literally brothers and sisters of royalty, all of us, no matter what it appears to be, what we appear to be on the surface. Again, remember, you cannot believe what you see in this world. This world is a distortion the way we see it. But God does not see the distortion. God just sees the truth. And God knows that you are a sacred prince or princess. God knows that you're a sacred child, right? So his testimonies, again, I'm saying his because that's just the way that our language works. His testimonies are very sure. He does not vary. He's not worried. He doesn't wonder, oh, I hope they're okay. His testimonies are very sure. Holiness becometh thine house. Holiness becometh the entire house of the Lord, and you are a member of the house of the Lord, and you cannot ever be expelled. It's impossible. And there's no reason to ever want you to be expelled, because no matter what you think you've done, no matter what you think, what kind of weaknesses you think you have, no matter, I don't care how atrocious you've been, God doesn't see it that way. God doesn't see you that way. God only sees you as the way he made you. So his testimonies are very sure. Holiness becomes thine house, and that includes you, because you, again, we are personalizing this. Your house is the house of the Lord. And when you see that your life is being an extension of the house of the Lord, things change. But if you want to see, if you keep seeing yourself as vulnerable and separate and being tossed from wave to wave in that scary sea, then that's going to be how it is. Because we have free will to use our minds any way we decide we want to, up to a point. Eventually God's going to say, okay, wake up. But but for now, we say thy testimonies are very sure. Holiness becomes thine house, O Lord, forever. Forever. And when does forever exist? Now. That's the only place that you can find eternity. That's the only place that you can find forever. It's the only time you can find forever is in the present moment. The present moment is the house of the Lord. When you're like, where do I find the house of the Lord? In the present moment. In the present moment. You cannot find the house of the Lord in the past or the future. You can find it only here and now. All right. So think on these things. These are very sacred thoughts, and you will be amazed at the results that come from working that psalm. And I cannot wait to work with you again. It's just always such a pleasure and privilege to be with you. And until next time, blessed be.